Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my friend, co-host, and dirty eater,
Alex D'Andino.
That's right. Before today's just sumptuous episode, delicious, delectable episode of Little Business, people, please go to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Help support the show. Help us grow the show. We're always working hard over there to make sure that it is a great value for you guys. Huge Patreon exclusive library, commentaries, mini series. We have a lot of fun and awesome stuff going on over there. Working hard to make that a good value. And we appreciate if you could go over to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Help us grow this show. Help us keep the lights on over there. We appreciate you in advance. Those of you who are already patrons, you know we love you. You know we love you.
The
YouTube
content
Film Alchemist.
that hot content.
That hot content. Hot goss. Yeah. The YouTube Film Alchemist. We're on all the social medias you're on, including TikTok now. You can find the Film Alchemist pod on TikTok, where you can find clips and other such. We have some fun stuff we're working on over there, actually. So go over there, check us out. Find us wherever you hang out. We'll be there. The email, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Make sure you're leaving 5-star ratings and reviews. Help us defeat the algorithm whenever you can, whenever possible. Oh, actually, there's one more. MisfitParade.net to check out little cool stuff that we're making. Misfit Parade is also on all the socials.net. That's our website. All right. All Consumptive Love. We kind of pussyfooted around the bush with Fear and Sleeping with the Enemy. Is that Bones and All love? No, that's just like I have a thing for a lady. This is like a true eat 'em up.
That's like stalker love. This is like legit. I will follow you to the ends of your earth.
Have you ever loved someone so much that you're like, I cannot get them close enough. I want them in my digestive tract. That's what this is.
Literally.
That's what it is. We got the old stroke and throat. We got a lot of just wild, sexy, bloodlusting maneuvers happening. The throat. The old jerk and throat. We're going to have to come up with a better name for that. The stroke and throat.
Please.
Pretty incredible kill maneuver. Die doing what you love. That's what I've always believed. So neither here nor there. This is it's just a fascinating, brilliant movie, honestly. Is it too long? Yes. You know the Film Alchemist stance on long movies. If it's going to be long, you better earn it, and you better not have 3 or 4 scenes that are doing the exact same lifting, which I think you could argue Bones and All has a lot of kind of repeat moments, repeat emotional moments, repeat vibes. I tend to give this one a pass on that more than other movies that kind of abuse the audience's time.
Absurdly longer than it should be. It's just a little.
No. Just there are little bits, but what this movie really wants us to do is breathe. Because at its core, what they're telling us is that this is a monster movie. And then you find out the monster is really just the difficulty of being alone, of being unloved, of never fitting in. These more amorphous monsters become kind of the focal point. They kind of fill every inch of the frame. Beyond the actual eaters, I think they're called at one point. So while Mark Rylance is fucking terrifying, what you find is really scary is just cruising this world alone, man. Parents don't want you. You can't go to school. You can't have friends. You can't have love. And the journey of that, the way they let that breathe, the way they let us sit in emotional moments and kind of based in whatever the characters are feeling at the time, I think this movie is so fucking strong, man. That really I didn't fucking care. Whatever they were doing at a certain point, I was just in for the ride. I loved it so much more this time than when I saw it in the theaters. I think this is an absolutely stunning film. Alex, opening thoughts on Bones and All.
Bones and All is just vibes, man. It's just vibes. It's got vibes all over the place. Every performance is strong. Even small roles David Gordon Green as the sidekick, strong, man. Like,
well, you're definitely like, one of these things is not like the others, but it was fun.
Little pieces are so just put together in a way that isn't distracting. It doesn't. I think the really key element of the whole movie is that the romance is so heavily focused on over the horror of it that when the horror enters, it's such a shock to your system that you like re-lock back into the movie in a way. Really fascinating. I think Luca Guadagnino is just like one of those great. He's just going to be one of those great filmmakers who pops up every couple of years, makes a movie, and then goes away. Like this movie to me screams of like almost this kind of Terrence Malick vibe. Like I don't know about you, I got like Days of Heaven vibes from this. Real strong Days of Heaven vibes.
We have so many great filmmakers. There are very few that are great at this kind of movie.
This is a really specific thing. And I think
this let it breathe, sit with the character. Because that's the thing. It has these kind of genre set pieces, right? These kind of genre dressings. That's not what this movie's about. What this movie's about, right? And the opening's so beautiful. It's a girl alone on a piano. This other young lady's like, hey, you want friends. You said you want to make more friends. Sneak out to my house. Very relatable, right? We watch a teenage girl. She wants to have friends, right? There's a shot where she's out of breath and covered in shit, and she sees the normal girls' party through the window and knocks, and they let her in. And then her and the friend are like sitting under the table having this really kind of adorable moment where you're like, oh, maybe this is even more than friendship. Maybe this is young love, right? Like these very relatable moments that are scary, right? Like if you think back to that age of just trying to make new friends, of trying to be cool, going to a sleepover where you don't know the other people and you're trying to be cool, right? And maybe you're starting to have feelings you don't understand. So these really relatable. So your emotions are revved up even though no horror is happening. And what he does in this movie so well is the horror and violence just becomes these really shocking punctuation marks.
Yeah. That's the
in the middle of a movie that is kind of real life scary, but doesn't feel like they belong, and it's expertly dropped.
I'll tell you what it feels like, because I agree. Like punctuation marks is the great way to put like what is the visible horror of this film. This is like what Griffey and I's favorite movie of I think 2020 or 2021 was Nomadland.
No.
This is
this is the bucket poop.
But to me, this is that thing that a lot of people who didn't necessarily like Nomadland, I thought it was fine, but like, you know, the rest of us, like Griffey and I talked about this a lot.
Very just forgettable. Like sort of no one's talked about it since, yeah.
Like to me, what makes this has all these memorable pieces that would have made Nomadland memorable. Like Bones and All has that same Nomadland vibe, which is this sort of day in the lifeness of
an outsider.
An outsider. The otherness is so pervasive throughout the film that you really do feel connected to these characters in a way that you don't feel connected to other like drifters and drifter-like movies.
Yeah, and I think it's so lovely, right? That any movie, and this movie kind of does both at the same time, right? But putting us in the space of the outsider. The person you would drive by on the road or see and like you just make all of these base assumptions, right? Putting us in their shoes and saying, hey, man, that's a fucking human being in there. And you have no fucking idea what they went through or what, you know. This is why people talk about privilege and advantage and this and that. That's what it's really about, is don't fucking shit on someone, you know, just from seeing them for a second and assume backwards all this negativity to make yourself feel better, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're really talking about. Not an exact accounting, right? And so movies that put you in those spots, like Frances McDormand in that, like Marin and Lee in this, where it's like these people that, you know, and granted, and this is like an all-timer, like bad fashion, bad haircut movie. So you would want to judge the shit out of them immediately as we start aging.
It's late 80s, you know, I get it.
Yeah, putting us in that, you know, that kind of other person shoe. And how would it feel if this was you and your parents left and you had this horrible affliction and you didn't know where you're from or why. You can't get any fucking answers. You just want help. But instead you see Mark Rylance fucking face down, ass up, eating an old lady. You know, like, how do you experience this? So the way of putting us in the outsider shoe to force us to grapple with their humanity mixed with putting us in what we would call a monster's shoes.
Sure.
And realizing that one of the things I loved watching at this time is you start, once the like kind of shock of what they're doing wears off on you, you realize at a point you're like, how can you call these people monsters at all? They're doing exactly what nature designed them for, right? Like we don't watch a shark like, oh, a shark ate a surfer and we're like, fucking sharks. Sharks are the worst. Sharks are out to get. No, they're fucking sharks. You fucking surfed over their area and they were hungry and they ate you. And I love that the movie never explains anything because it kind of keeps us in this. It allows us to put ourselves in that situation with our own bullshit. Because there is an amorphous nature to why they're eating. But yeah, we're in the outsider shoe. One shoe's outsider, one shoe's monster. And we really take it for a walk, man. Like you really sink very deep into the emotional psyche of this movie. So much more than most movies allow you to dive in.
I mean, I think that's why I feel it has very Terrence Malick vibes. Like,
yeah. But even his, I don't know that I link all the time.
No. But I don't mean like now. His movies now are much more ethereal. I would say like that's why I brought up Days of Heaven. Like to me, Days of Heaven is such a
there's a sweet spot in these kind of movies. Yeah.
Like to me, Days of Heaven is such a great analog to this movie because it does have that same voiceover thing. I don't do voiceover. Like voiceover in movies is kind of hard. I think sometimes there's like a real sweet spot for it. Andre Holland's voiceover particularly is just nailed.
Well, it's a pretty brilliant device.
It's
to
really
say,
well.
We see this
device.
Dad who just, I mean, at the start, she comes back, she bites that finger off. She has this like sexual release face, but then she's running in terror, and the dad's like, "You didn't. 3 minutes."
Didn't.
So
Dude,
you know
great,
this
man.
has happened before, and it's really
I love
tense.
Andre Holland too. Like,
And then he's just gone.
Actor.
He's so fucking good.
He's
and
so
just
good.
literally feast on the little bit he's got. But then he leaves her a tape because he says, "I cannot." It's like Marin when she meets her grandma. It's just like they want nothing to do. We know that you're not one of us. Whatever you are, we can't grapple with, right? Him as the father is just like this, what monster have I created and how have I failed as a parent, right? The grandmother's is very much this Midwestern Bible lady, thinks she can help the world by adopting this girl she heard about. And then she's like, oh, this isn't a troubled girl that's going to make me like a Facebook superstar. This is a monster. It's almost an assault on her God, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would God create the... So you watch this, but what they do is they say, here's a tape recorder where we're not going to have any fucking answers. So I hate voiceovers that are trying to tell us answers that we haven't earned.
Yeah.
That's bad writing. What this is saying is, hey, the first time I saw this, you were eating an earlobe with an earring. You were 3. Hey, there's a time when you went to camp. Why did I let you go to camp? And a boy went missing. Right? So now what we're doing is we're filling in his emotional journey.
Right. I'll tell you the thing. I wish that I had actually gotten more of it because I do think it's a really lovely,
It
like,
does
on
kind
top
of
of
pop
the carnage.
off after they meet the mom, yeah.
On top of the carnage, I actually think that that's a beautiful punctuation mark to a lot of these scenes as well. This movie is just punctuated very well. Like, these journeyman stories sometimes can drag in a way that you don't expect them to. And I'm not saying the movie is, like, incapable of dragging, but it does a very good job.
It definitely is
not,
at times, yeah.
It does a very good job of, like, not doing it to the point where I, like, want to turn the movie off. I want to.
It never gets lost up its own ass. That's the danger
that's
zone for
great
these
way
movies.
to put it.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. It never gets lost up its own ass. It does such a good job of making the movie it wants to make. And again, Luca Guadagnino is just like, I don't know, man. He just knows how to do this in a way that I have not. Like, you could see another director, like especially like a first-time director, just getting lost in a 3-hour extravaganza, and you're like, this is not going to work.
Well, it's like when you
being
watch
a 2-hour and 11-minute movie,
yeah.
this is like a really tight 2 hours and 11 minutes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and there's so many kinds of great directors, right? Like, I just watched the new Indiana Jones. I'm trying to watch through the Oscar movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what a hideous piece of shit of a film. And I saw all these people on Letterboxd like, it gave me that vibe of old Indiana Jones. It gave me what I want. The third act is fun. And I was watching, I was like, what a hideous piece of shit movie. The story is stupid. The fucking, them all being ancient is so bad. There's like little moments that work. And I was sitting there, I was like, James Mangold is a great director. But there are directors that are good at different things. And you're like, even Spielberg, right? He makes a certain kind of movie. he couldn't make this movie. Spielberg couldn't make this fucking movie as good as it is. And so what Luca's superpower is finding a way to make those small moments, right? Like them sitting on the planes. To make that feel as cinematic and eventful to me as Nazis in Indiana Jones flying over Archimedes or whatever. Actually, way fucking more. By the way, if you like the new Indiana Jones, man, I do appreciate the, like, standing on business for Indiana Jones. Like, we remember, that movie fucking sucks balls.
I couldn't get through
just
40 minutes.
Old, droopy balls that, like, touch the water when he sits down to shit. That's the kind of balls Indiana Jones, the new one, sucked. But
neither here nor there.
We're not here to shit on Indiana Jones's fucking remains. We're here to fucking gobble up Mark Rylance.
I'll say this other thing about what's impressive. Like, for a movie that is this cast is fucking stacked, dude.
How fucking amazing
Holy
is
shit.
every actor in this movie?
Every single performance, big or small,
except for David Gordon Green, who's very average, but that's fine.
Again, but David Gordon Green's lines are like one thing, and then he just smiles through the rest of it.
He's supposed to play a creep that would make you uncomfortable as he's just a normal guy who cannibalized. I'm like, he did
Nailed
that.
it.
Also, I was
Thank
like,
you.
the balls on David Gordon Green, because one, he's like, you know what, I'm going to come in and just start fucking around with Halloween. I'm going to start fucking around with The Exorcist, and he's just taking shots, and then he's like, wait, you have Timothée Chalamet, Mark Rylance, just a cast of heavy hitter actors. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna come in and chew the scenery with them.
It's one of the,
I can
hey,
do that.
do you want to chew the scenery in a scene with Timothée Chalamet? What is this? What is the actress name? Russell. Cannot remember her name off the top of my head. Taylor Russell. Do you want to do a scene with Taylor Russell, Timothée Chalamet, and oh yeah, Michael Stuhlbarg? Like, how do you feel about that? Yeah, sure. I'll just be a fly on the wall. No,
he goes,
go ahead and
you know what? I
chew
do
it.
fit in that kind of company. That's
I do
the
fit in that
acting
company,
level
yeah.
I'm bringing to it.
But like,
the
you know
balls
who, like,
on that guy, you have to appreciate.
you have to respect. I'll
Big
say the
ass
other
balls.
thing. The other thing that I was like not prepared for is because you brought it up, the grandma, fucking Jessica Harper, who was amazing in the like 5 minutes she's in this movie. She does this again. Everybody has these great scenes. Everyone is good. Chloe Sevigny, like everyone is awesome.
What this movie actually is, because you start thinking about it, you're like, all right, it's not a cannibal movie, it's not a vampire movie. It's a horror movie because it's rooted in like horror imagery,
There's
but even
something
that
horrific that happens.
vampiric almost. What I actually think this movie is, this is a post-apocalypse movie. This is walking through the emotional remains of a family tree.
Yeah.
Like we are just walking through and seeing. So Jessica Harper's grandma, again, this is a woman who thought she was doing good in the world, adopting this girl. I'll take care of her. I'm going to be the talk of the church. All that gets blown up. Her life is wrecked. Now she has to go to her small town church and do her small town 4th of July parades and, you know, potlucks. And she goes, oh, wait, I just know there are people that eat other fucking people. I just know there are people that are not us. They were designed to eat. Why would nature, i.e. God, create these things to do that? I'm doing my part. I put my 10% in every week. And you just watch the remnants of her. Like when she sees Marin, there's nothing except for, if you could just leave so I can go back to pretending it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right? You see the dad and he's just like, I fucking tried, man. I cannot fucking live like this. I cannot help you.
Everybody's attempt to normalize the behavior.
Timothée Chalamet can't go back home for fear his mom will see him because mom thinks he killed his dad who tried to eat him. Like, we are just watching what is left of people. Most notably, Chloe Sevigny, who just fucking crushes in an essentially wordless role. We do hear her voiceover with her letter. But what we do is we watch, they're showing us this young romance that feels like so many other movies. And then Chloe Sevigny is like, yeah, I had that. Look where I am now. I have no fucking hands. I want to kill myself. Monsters do not deserve love in this story. And she goes, the only reason I didn't kill myself is because I'm waiting for you to come find me and I'm going to spare you the pain by fucking chewing your throat open. In watching the wreckage of Marin's mother, and watching the desperation as she watches her read that letter, not in shame, but in anticipation, because she wants her to know why she's ripping her throat out. Yeah. The emotional depth that scene is portraying visually.
Well, like, do you ever think in a movie about, like, again, if you walk in with the broad strokes of what this movie is, did you ever think a movie about cannibals would end up being about, like, generational trauma and all these other, like,
this is not Cannibal Holocaust and Cannibal Ferox, these piece of shit movies that people are like, that's extreme, bro.
Which is, like, I think that's the great misnomer of walking into the theater for this kind of movie.
It's an emotional apocalypse film. That's the new genre I would put this in.
I think that's a great, I mean, to me, the movies that have come to mind when I think about, like, where this fits, like, because I always think about
Requiem for a Dream,
like New Beverly's a great place, like, where they do a lot of, like, kooky double features because Quentin Tarantino. Like, this would fit with, like, Requiem. I would program it with Days of Heaven, even though both of them are, like, really, really long movies. Mm-hmm. Like, the other one that I think of a lot is Only Lovers Left Alive, because it's another one about, like, tangentially about the horror aspect of what it is.
Bram Stoker's Dracula a little bit.
Well, Bram Stoker's Dracula is just, like, by accident about Dracula. It's mostly about sex.
Yeah.
But
it's that weird. I mean,
it's just such a great. It's such a great movie about. I love that phrase, emotional apocalypse. That's
we are. It's The Road. It's Cormac McCarthy's The Road, but it's just feelings.
Yeah,
that's what we're pushing a shopping cart through what's left of people's feelings. Spoiler alert: it ain't much, except for the two young lovers. Who in finding each other, they think they can fucking forge ahead. I love that line, right? After we do the old throat and stroke, when he's, like, flirting with this guy and the camera's real close. We're watching his flirting technique is a predatory technique, right? And like, all right. He goes over, he catches the guy, he's just fucking jerking him off into the cornfield. Every Hoosier boy has had this exact fantasy. We're all susceptible. Maybe I don't want Timothy Chalamet's little fucking Slender Man hands jerking me off.
Fair.
I would either want, like, a lady's hands or, like, big fucking, like, deadlifter hands. Like, it's got to be one or the other, I think. Like, catcher's mitt. Yeah, my hands. I don't want these little fucking. I don't want Jack Skellington doing it. You know, you got to be one or the other. Yeah. But he's getting jerked off, and what I love is that Chalamet is at least like a guy. It's like. A guy, a kind heart, whatever the phrase is for that. Like, he's a good one. Way to let him bust before you. So, like, right as the ejaculate hits the leaf, then you slice.
That's a real service.
That's a real, and I don't know biologically what that, because they say they can smell all this extra sensory shit. I don't know if that would taint the flavor if the balls are bluer. But I was like, what a fucking good one. What a real one for letting him fucking spray nut before blood. I was A+. A+. But then there's a couple scenes, right, where you go back, right? The first guy we see him kill at a convenience store. He's kind of Robin Hooding. He kills this guy. They go back to this dude's house. It's a shitty little room with just fucking tits taped to the wall and kiss posters. And we sing Lick It Up. And I was like, I fucking love that Lick It Up is in the middle of this kind of art house fucking movie.
I was
waiting. Like, yeah, dude. You're like, kill these guys, take their money, and let's go. They try that again with the throat and stroke guy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he's got a fucking family. He's got a wife. He's got kids. We see the wife running in the distance through the yard. It's amazing. It's such a set you up.
This kiss, Lick It Up scene, I was like, this is why this is like Griffey's movie. Because this is like, you know. I was going to ask you if
you had me at Cannibals, you had my fucking heart at Lick It Up, dude.
Well, my question, I was going to ask if you felt upset that they... the gentleman who was clearly a member of the Kiss Army was such a douchebag. They did not do a favor for the Kiss Army.
No. Like the Juggalos, like Swifties, like so many the Beehive, Bayhive, like so many great communities.
The remake of this in 30 years is definitely Swiftie.
Yeah.
Like what's he listen to? Love Story. All right.
Yeah. We all have our turds. It's no, Ravens fans, like whoever you're a group of, there's turds in every punch bowl, right?
Of course.
As a former card-carrying member of the Kiss Army, I can say that we will not miss him. We will not miss him. It's fine.
That's all I needed to know.
Yeah, and I just thought it was great. But then you pair that with the seeing the lady run, my husband, and you're like, okay, so he's this closeted man who's, just wants to get jerked off in corn. He's leading a double life. So we're watching his kind of emotional family wreckage we're actually watching it fall, that one. We're watching the demolition right there. And I love that moment where Marin loses it. And she's like, what the fuck? We're monsters. And Timothée Chalamet has one of my favorite lines in the movies. He goes, how fucking dare you make this harder?
That
and to
is
me,
a brilliant line in this movie.
It's such a fucking powerhouse. Because Lee
Come
often
on.
is chasing Marin, and he's just this like emotionally inept young guy. And he's like, what do you want me to do? I don't know how to deal with this. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. At least he's emotionally mature enough to say, I need help. I want to do right, but I don't have the answers. In that moment when he kind of puts that on her, that's where it really sunk into me. It's like, how can you get mad at something for doing exactly what it's designed for?
I think they're
not us. They're not humans.
Yeah. That's what's so fascinating about that moment. And again, it's again one of those, like, this movie is just punctuation. That is really like that is probably the buzzword I would say. Like, there are things in this movie, and that's one of them. Even a line of dialogue like that just ends a scene in a way that's like, how dare you make this harder? It's like, oh shit. Yeah. He's not just a fucking murderer. This is like sustenance. Like, this isn't just like ritualistic murder.
Eat.
They
right.
have
and
to eat.
It's, he's trying to find people. Like, they all have their code of how they try to figure it out. And so we see kind of all the extremes, right? Mark Rylance tries to claim that he looks for people who are dying. Chalamet tries to find assholes and kiss army members. And then the fucking dirtballs we meet, he's just like, I'll get whoever the fuck. I don't care. Like, I'm eating as much as I can and enjoying this. Right? Mm-hmm. And it's just every fucking scene. It's really incredible. I don't know if I've ever seen a movie where the scenes are just more perfectly formed individually. Again, there's a lot of repetition, but they're so perfectly formed as these little micro events.
The way that I've seen that happen before, though, in other movies, I really, the way it's paced is strategic, and it's very, and honestly pleasant. Like, it's a well-paced movie. And yeah, like, I know we talk about the length of movies a lot. It really did not bother me how long this movie was.
No, and that's the thing. It doesn't bother me at all. And again, we say as a baseline,
it's
90 minutes. If you're going to go over 90, it's kind of one of our bits. If you're going to go over 90, earn it. I mean, there are not many movies that earn it as well as this. Because that's the thing. If these scenes were edited faster and, we kind of are emotionally truncated because of that.
Right.
The movie would collapse. It wouldn't.
I think we
work.
talk about.
We have to sit on the high plains. We have to sit, because that's the thing. Like, that high plains scene. The point of it is that she wants him to expose himself the last time. Two predators, unsure, they're shaky. Can they find love? She goes, I want you to take the last step. Meet me. Right? You saw my horrible secret. I want to know meet me. What happened with your dad? There's a lot of them just driving happy through nothingness. There's them sitting in nothingness. That extra time sitting in that moment, what it does for us as an audience is it shows us crystal clear without a shadow of a doubt. If there were no human beings around, there is no impediment to their happiness. The reason that they've struggled in this life and their parents have tried to kill them and eat them and their families have abandoned them and they're on the run is because they are not us. They are so far removed from society. So the extra time breathing in that scene is crucial. The moments where he talks about how he tried to save his dad and his dad was trying to eat him, and that's the first time he smelled it. Yeah. He talked about the look his dad had when his dad was breathing funny, and he knew after 3 days being duct taped that he was coming to eat him. The feelings of him talking about when he did, he felt high as shit, and it was great. He's talking about eating his father after he got out of jail, covered in his own blood that his father had drawn. Mm-hmm. Like, that's only a tragedy because they exist in a human world. In a world where they were the dominant species early, and it was just understood that we eat each other. This is nature. Yeah. But watching them try to be something they can never fully be, you really sit in that moment. You're like, fuck, these kids could just be so happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and they
But
give us
how?
that. I
How
think
will this ever work out so that separation, that quietness, that slowness matters?
Well, I think that's what's so critical about the back half of the movie, because they give us that. They show these people. They show, like, whenever where do they settle down?
Ann Arbor,
Was it Michigan.
Michigan,
Ann Arbor, yeah.
University of Michigan, yeah.
So they settle down in Ann Arbor and literally become like domesticated, not drifter people. Like, I mean, you know, they still dress.
Think of
weird.
the comfort of just her getting ready in like a tank top and her underwear, walking out, giving him a kiss as he's cooking, talking to his sister. You're like, fuck. And again, it's one of those, wow, that is how small their dream was. Some of us would think that's not enough, and they were
amazing.
so fucking happy.
I think the thing that's so fascinating about the way the movie's paced too is because like Andrea and I watched this, and every single scene we were waiting for the other shoe to drop. Yeah. I think that's like always the thing, and especially once Mark Rylance shows back up and like curses her out.
You cunt.
Yeah, calling her the C word.
I never ate face down, ass up with no one before. That means something. You're like, Jesus.
But that's like, but you're like, okay, so he's come back once. We have to have the final, like, it's going to happen. Just by movie logic, it has to happen in threes. So you're like, you know it's coming, and there's going to have to be.
It's also because that's the only time where we start really happy. And so you know that last shoe is going to be extraordinarily hard to suffer.
It's this huge. Yeah, like
what is it? The Damocles sword? Yeah, this movie's got like the Damocles ceiling of swords. Like there's one for every fucking happy moment.
It's this huge Air Jordan waiting to just stomp out this entire. Or sorry, he's mostly wearing
Juggalo's Doc Martin.
Seems like he's wearing mostly Reebok pumps. So it's just this huge Reebok pump waiting.
That's
to
true.
Just
There
drop.
weren't Juggalos when this movie was made.
No, there were not.
Was there Faygo? I hope so.
I hope
World
Faygo's
Before Faygo is something
I'm assuming Faygo's been around since the beginning of time.
Faygo does fucking rule. They get made fun of a lot. They have great taste in drink. Neither here nor there.
I think knockoff soda is generally pretty good.
It's all good.
Like,
it's all good. To the point. There are just moments of them constantly confronting. Like, I love that diner scene when they're just talking about what they're going to do, and the little girl's watching her, and she makes that monster face. But she is a real fucking monster to that kid. It's just beautiful across the board. The thing we have not talked about, which we should before we do the ending, is Mark Rylance just immediately like one of the top 5 fucking greatest performances in a horror movie ever? How fucking good is Sully in this movie? Like, it's fucking wild because this movie's full of good actors.
He's amazing.
This performance and the choices he makes, it is one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen.
I have to take a moment because I actually paused the movie last night to say this to Andrea. I was just like, there's not a single movie not made better by Mark Rylance just showing up.
You know what's weird is like I feel like he never mattered. He got nominated for like Bridge of Spies, and I was like, who the fuck is that? And then now he like pops up and shit, and he is
the best part of.
He just
movies.
like never was in my purview for some reason, and then now it's like something like this. I was like, this has to easily be his best performance of all time.
I mean, it was like this.
I'd have to do the research.
Don't Look Up performance. Like he's just.
Not like this, though.
Fucking believable.
Like that first where he's like, hey, I smelled you. And he grabs that toothpick, and they do that side shot of like the toothpick and the feather, and you're like, he's already iconic.
Dude,
he's been on screen for 2 minutes.
Oh, my
and he's
God.
already. That whole opening scene, the fucking braids, trying to kind of fill her in. And he's like, follow your nose. Tell me what you smell. And you start. There's like this rhythm that he finds in how he talks.
He has that like Pennywise creep without having to put on makeup. You're like,
yeah,
fuck me,
it's
dude.
so fucking scary because you know it's so bad, but then you're like, but he's the same as her. And the opening scene told me that I do kind of like her, so maybe he'll be this like charming mentor, like an Obi want to eat old ladies now. You're like, all right, maybe, and then all of a sudden it's she's like, I can't, like, that lady's still alive. We got to get out of here. And he goes, let me bone down on this. We got to eat. He's like, whatever we got, it's got to be fed. And then he starts this, like, eventually you're going to have to do it more and more and more. And he has that line, you won't always be able to hold back. He's kind of letting her know. And it's this weird self-indictment, right? That eventually the more you concede to it, it will just take over. So you never know. Is he telling you the truth? Whatever. But then the tighty whities thing in the morning where they're just like in their underwear, they're covered in blood. He's got his like fucking braid. He keeps the hair of all the women. Mm-hmm. So you're like, he thinks he's honoring them. Is he liking? You never know where it comes from with Sully. But then the tighty whities are creepy, whatever. He's like, let's get cleaned up. They eat face down, ass up together. Mm-hmm. He gives her this incredible look. Like it's one of those silent acting moments. It's like that's what separates when she's
driving away
actors.
on the bus. Yeah.
No, that scene is separate, right? That's
you're talking.
I was talking about when he looks up and he's eating like a hyena at the carcass,
okay.
And she comes in. I was like, that's just one of those moments. Like you can't teach that. You can't you got it or you don't. He crushed it. Followed immediately by like one of the shots of the movie is him watching, and he's like, we shared this thing, and you don't want to be with me. This man who has lived in loneliness for his whole life.
He's
he
like
ate his
weirdly
granddad.
Heartbroken. He's fascinating.
And again, he's a fucking terrifying character, but you're
Absolutely.
like, yeah, he ate his granddad. He had no idea of knowing why, what happened. His family didn't know. I mean, fuck, imagine wherever he came from and back in the time. They thought it was demons, whatever the fuck. He was a monster of old. Who knows? So he's been running and gunning and drifting. And he thinks he's found someone he can actually help. Like, we never know his motivations, but you can do the emotional math. He's fucking lonely. It's a lonely fucking life, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And then, to your point, he keeps coming back. He's like, I've been watching you on your journey. And he's like, old Sully is ready. And she's like, Sully, it's weird you fucking followed me. Be
it's
cool.
Weird you're
like,
following me.
God!
That's not great.
And it's like, well, that's bad. Sully, don't just start screaming cunt. Like, be cool.
Don't start screaming the C word in the middle of
watch
the
him,
middle
like,
of
touching
like,
his fucking van like he
rural
wishes it was her
Midwest.
neck, right? Like it's such masterful acting. But when he comes back in the finale, it is one of the great endings of it. Like he's so fucking
good.
Scary. He's so believable. It's so emotionally true.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exploitative to me. They really, and he's not in the movie that much. But to me, if you're like, what's the first thing you remember when you think of this movie? It's Sully. Like Sully is all the best stuff in the movie.
He's just it's such an effective performance. The shadow that it casts over the entire movie is just unbelievable.
Because you know that when he tells her on the planes, he goes, you want to be people? Let's be people. And then we see the people. And then Sully comes in and grabs her and he goes, we don't scream at friends. And you're like, oh my fucking God. And the movie has trained us. You're like, any fucking horrible, hideous thing could happen here. Mm-hmm. Of course, a battle ensues and Lee perishes. But you're like, of course these
but not
people.
Before he just says,
can't
eat me.
Yeah, I want you to live and eat me. I want you to love me and eat me. I was like, man, if every husband hasn't dreamed of hearing that, Jesus H. But it's just this. It's so, because almost the end of it doesn't. I don't want to say that Timothée Chalamet dying and pleading with her to eat and then cutting back to the plains isn't emotionally effective. I think it is. It's so hard to do that after Mark Rylance is on the screen.
I agree. There is something I wanted to ask you this because Andrea looked it up after, because I didn't know it was based on a book. I never read the book, but so in the book apparently, she eats him, but he does not tell her to eat him. She does it without his consent.
If you want to know my honest opinion, I think that's better.
I kind of do too. I thought the same thing.
It's this. Again, the movie's constantly telling us.
I get what they're doing.
The whole movie is about people who tried to fight nature and the consequences of that. So that letting Timothée Chalamet and her end the movie happy on the plains, tits to fucking spinal cage because he has no body fat, is nice. And there is something about her eating him afterwards that would taint that.
Right.
For sure.
I mean, I guess if you want to look at it, the contextual romanticism makes sense within the scope of the movie.
You could not go back to the plains is effective. Well, maybe you could. Maybe knowing what's happening.
I do think it's a better ending for it to be.
There's a sexiness to the eating.
By the way, something we haven't brought up. It's really brief. The makeup effects in this are fucking awesome.
It's unbelievable.
I have to say that one thing, like when she when Sully invites her over to eat that old lady and she makes that first bite, like that tear into the flesh and you just see the skin peel away. That I was like, we were eating
ever since
dinner
I was kid
in
with
the middle
George
of watching
Romero
this movie last night. I was
movies.
like, I gotta stop eating for a second.
Every time I see something like that, I love. But I think of that last scene, right? It's very reminiscent to me. So they're eating this old lady who's dying. They don't help her, so they're kind of complicit in her death. What they're really doing is eating her. Maybe they're eating her alive. We don't even know. But we listen to the sounds of them eating as we do this kind of opening of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. We float past this old lady's dresser, and we see the pictures of a long, happy, fulfilling life, we assume. We don't know. But we assume there's weddings and kids and grandkids and traveling. Mm-hmm. And all we hear in the end is that fucking chewing, right? That no matter what, that's how it ends for all of us. Something is going to chew us up, and it's over, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's a consumptive disease, whether that's addiction, whether that's getting fucking run over by a semi-truck, like whatever it is, the world is going to chew on us at the end. I thought there was a real beauty to that. And I think the only problem I have is, yes, you want Marin and Lee's romance to essentially stay intact. What I kind of don't like about him having to give her permission is twofold. Is one, it's a movie about not fighting nature, which it seems like they stop fighting nature when they're happy in Ann Arbor, and then nature fights back. I don't feel like they are punished because they did something they shouldn't. Maybe the movie's saying they shouldn't have tried to be people, right? And that's what happened. Whatever. I don't think he would have to tell her to eat. I think she would want to eat him, bones and all, to have that last moment of having all of him she can. And I don't think she would have to ask, and I definitely don't think he would have to tell her or get permission. Because, again, they are the same.
So what you're saying is the movie ends with him mansplaining how to eat her.
It feels a little like mansplaining.
Little mansplaining.
He's like, Marin, please stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Let me.
So really, what this boils down to is toxic masculinity at the very end of this film. Wow.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, you can stop
bones
explaining.
And all's got layers, guys.
It'll take me 5 minutes to eat what little bits on the bone there, pal. Maybe back it down, right?
Thank you for the bountiful ribs, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thanks for giving me life advice, guy with a mullet. Maybe bring it down a little bit. We're kind of highfalutin here, mansplaining me.
I mean, if you really think about it, yeah, like Timothy Chalamet being the meal is, you're just like, I mean, how long does that last?
Yeah, he's like, eat me, and she's like, what are you talking about? What am I
going to eat?
Yeah, ew, gross. She's like, yeah, I'm not a dog. I don't chew on bones recreationally. What are you talking about? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, thanks for the marrow. Appreciate that.
I guess your eyeballs are, yeah, that's fine. They're probably okay. Yeah, it is weird. If I had one thing, I do wonder why we didn't go a little more into, and again, it's a fine line. So you don't want to over-prescribe the eating or say enough to where then it becomes so locked in mythology-wise that we can't imagine ourselves in it. I did want to know if when he said there's before bones and all and after, and like that's a big deal. I did want to know.
I agree. Yeah.
What they were trying to tell me that is that you ate all of it, that you had the gumption to eat things you weren't supposed to. I guess, you know, in these art house kind of movies, you can metaphorically assume it's the once you have completed the task all the way, you're not 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right.
Like you're more about, you're down for that life. You about that life. I did wonder if there was a moment they could have, because they so beautifully and poetically explain everything else. That kind of needs explaining.
Sure.
But again, it's a movie that I think it's so hard to make a movie that where the magic is in the downtime. Because I think a lot of people say that, right? Like they'll watch a Marvel movie and be like, man, that look that Tony gives Black Widow. And you're like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Like, that's not the same as when we're watching these two in the truck. Yeah. And it's really hard to make a movie where the bulk of the magic happens in those just kind of quiet, still moments with two characters sitting actually emotionally open to each other. Like, it's
to
hard.
That logic. Look, and I think Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson are great actors. Like, I've never not enjoyed their performances.
It's fine.
But that's not what those movies are for. These movies are built like Luca Guadagnino made a movie built for that moment, built for these moments, these small moments. So like that's when you see it like this is like when you see it in a Marvel movie per se, it's like shock to your system. You're like, whoa. Because it's more like, where'd they come up with that idea? That's
it's almost like when you see Dick Van Dyke dance in Mary Poppins, you're like, wait, he's not a cartoon.
Like, wait,
no, I'm neither.
He can do that? Interesting.
I'm just shit talking, but
you're right. But
it is
I
incredible.
Agree. And then when you see it in movies like this, you're like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be focused on. I'm not focused on the fact that these guys escaped from these weird cannibals, or I'm not supposed to focus on the fact that, face down, ass up Mark Rylance and the girl
How could I
eating.
not?
I'm focused on the fact that it ends with this dejected look that Mark Rylance gives her from the bus, which is just beautiful. Or Timothée Chalamet delivering the line of the movie, just like, how dare you make this harder than it already is. Like, that's those moments. Yeah. That's what this movie is built for. So when you see it in that context, you're like, damn, this movie is good.
There is a confidence you have to have as a filmmaker, right? To really stay in the pocket in these. And I can imagine some people are like, well, if this movie really had that confidence, why do they need all the cannibalism and this and that? Sure, you could make a version of this that is just a straight coming-of-age kids on the run story, right?
Sure.
There's thousands of those. But the way they use the set dressing to give a more unengageable audience something to sink their teeth into while never shorting on the emotional journey. Again, and maybe people disagree with me. Maybe they think that every movie has these great emotional beats. Maybe they do. They don't have them this often. The bridge between them is sturdy.
I think to fit nuance in a movie about like cannibalism or any sort of
it's coming
aspect.
Of age, it's sexual
Pretty
awakening,
impressive.
it's addiction. Cool. Yeah, it's fucking family trauma.
I think any movie that has nuance in it, but like any movie with nuance that's about something this kind of like socially catastrophic is really worth your time. Really worth watching.
I mean, it is, and I don't really even remember why it didn't really connect with me as much in the theater. I remember me and my friend driving home, and I was pretty hot and cold. And I was like, yeah, the Mark Rylance stuff was amazing, obviously, but I watched it. I was fucking floored. I was like, this really is like one of the best pieces of work I've seen in the past couple years. Like, I bet if I went through and really took a list, like, I don't know where I would put this, but it's got to be.
Yeah.
Would it make, how many years would I have to go back before it falls out of like the top 10 most powerful pieces for me personally, right? Like, I know some people like other Oppenheimer, whatever. For me, this one kind of hits all my sweet spots. And I think it's so fucking rewarding of a film. I don't know what the disconnect was, honestly. I think what's
interesting about movies like this, and it's funny you bring up Oppenheimer, because Christopher Nolan has the same thing for me that, like, honestly, Luca Guadagnino has this too. There's a rewatch factor to movies made by filmmakers who I think a lot of the times we just sort of like say, oh yeah, that was a great movie. Cool. Thank you for the meal. Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. It's like this repeat occurrence though. And I've had this happen like between him, even Fincher lately. Like I rewatch a lot of these movies from great filmmakers or filmmakers that I consider great. And I'm like, oh, wow, I never noticed this before. And this movie is all of a sudden like re-unlocked.
That is one of the other most impressive traits of films, is that they continue to grow and evolve with you as a human.
I agree.
And there's so much work in there that you can always like really dig back in, and that it feels new and fun every time.
Agreed.
That is, I mean, that's like next level. I can't even imagine how you
want
to
talk about superpowers. That's a fucking superpower.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what this one is, right? This is a true like primordial soup of all the stuff that matters about humans confronting monsters in every form, in any shape. It's fucking incredible, man. Like I was so enamored by it this time watching it. I think it's a fucking stunner, man. I think it's a fucking stone cold stunner.
True love.
That's right. I just realized I said stone cold stunner.
Up.
Yeah, no one our age can hear Stone Cold Stunner and not immediately hear Glass Break in the Stone Cold song.
That's true.
Oh my God, Stone Cold's eating him bones and all. Stone Cold's eating him bones and all. Jesus
Christ.
Christ.
Into the clapping and singing Kiss you didn't even join. Lick it up. Sorry.
Did I see the third to last Kiss show ever? Because I'm sure this time they mean it on their 5th retirement tour. Yes, I did. Was I there? Did my 2 sons fall asleep in a Kiss concert with nonstop pyro and explosions that would melt most people's face off? The Griffey boys were like, I can take a nap through this. Yes, they did. They saw one song, went dope, and immediately fell asleep.
Respect.
Griffey's, we're raised in war, dude. We're raised in war. We are the Mark Rylances of 80s fucking pop metal. No big deal. Yeah. We even listen to Kisco, dude. That's how hard we are. Neither here nor there. What a sumptuous meal this was. I would gobble this movie up, bones and all.
Same.
Awesome. What a great movie. We have one more all-time classic coming up next. City of Angels.
And I don't want the world to see me.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
because I don't think
there
they
is a
understand.
There should be, I'm sure this is a podcast somewhere, but I was like, just a little side episode where we just talk about the tie-in mega fucking chart-crushing song with a blockbuster with like an A-list actor with the tie-in videos that are fucking insane. How they decide, like, remember the Goo Goo Dolls like walking around? I was like, what is this like? Yeah, is this like Howl's Moving Castle? Where the fuck are they looking at us from? Is this fucking Jan Jarobi's house in Dragon?
Yeah, he's got these huge like magnifying glasses. I agree. Well, it's funny you bring that up. There might be a side pod about that.
Little mini series. We have some really cool stuff. We're crushing through our Tales from the Crypt series now. We have some other cool stuff on the way. We're even going to have some writing coming up at even the $1 level, so you're going to start getting fun stuff no matter where you are. We work very hard over on patreon.com/filmalchemistpod to return the favor. If you're kind enough to support the show, help us grow the show, help us spread the word of the show, we want to make absolutely fucking sure that you are getting the work back from us. So thank you, guys.
We're going to give it.
Thank you in advance. The YouTube Film Alchemist. We're on all the social media, TikTok included now. Go find us there. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Make sure you're doing 5-star ratings and review. Make sure you're going to misfitparade.net to check out some of the film work we're starting up. It's been a good ride so far. We got a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, so go check that out, misfitparade.net. More than anything, make sure you come back next week for City of Angels in our all-consumptive love month. The month of Amour is nigh.